Dr. Stone, episode 7, recap, go. So, we show up to Kohaku's village, we meet Genro, Ginro, and Chrome, and then Chrome and Senku have the ultimate sorcerer battle. Yeah! What did I like? If you can't tell, I love this episode. I knew I had to take notes for this episode, and they don't do a whole lot of even inventing or whatever, but oh my god, so much happens, and all of it's good. I don't even think there's gonna be a what did you not like in this episode, or in this podcast. So let's just start at the beginning, because that's where my notes start, obviously. Even before the opening credits, we get a great line that is the lead-in from last episode, because the last line of last episode was Kohaku saying, "I've taken quite a liking to you." And at the beginning of this episode, you hear Senku saying, "I don't like what you just said." He's like, "There's nothing as illogical or trouble-prone than relationships." And I think that's a good line. Whenever I was a kid, I think I was like middle school, there's this guy, I don't even really remember how I knew him, but he would always say, "Women are a distraction." And I found that very much to be the case when you're Senku's age. But as a married man, I can't really in good faith say that that stays that way all the way through your life. But if you're Senku's age, I wholeheartedly agree with the line of that nothing is as illogical or trouble prone than relationships, because there is nothing dumber than a high school boy, and there's nothing more trouble prone than a high school girl. It's okay, they weren't my demographic anyway. I can pass off high school girls probably. Oh wait, they run Twitter. Fuck. All right, back on topic. This is gonna be I'm gonna have a lot of fun with this episode. So yeah, we get a little bit of spoileriness at the beginning of the episode where Kohaku says that she knows the perfect man from her village, which I love that Senku just refers to the village as like her lion's den and all of her lion friends. Then we find out that she's why she was the person to hear the explosions, and it's always a good reason for your characters to have reasons for being where they are. It's always a good thing to have reasons for where your characters are. Then as they're going back and they're talking, Senku has a really good line where he's like, "Is everyone in this stone world a gorilla? There's Kohaku, Taiju, Tsukasa," and because for the rest of the show, I'm pretty sure he calls Kohaku a lion, and she gets fed up with that the first time he says it to her, but then once he calls her a gorilla, she kind of concedes the point that, yeah, you can call me a lioness, just don't call me a goddamn gorilla, which I like playing with your joke that's going to be a recurring joke. It's always good. I love this episode. Such good writing, such good animation. Then yeah, so Senku's not strong enough to bring the healing water back. That's what that last tangent was supposed to be leading to. Kahaku's bringing water from a hot spring to her village for healing properties for her sister. And since she had a fight with Tsukasa and a tree fell on her, and Senku's just a little shrimpy beta boy, neither of them can move the healing spring water very well. And so instead of overexerting themselves, Senku just builds a little motorless go-kart thing, and they just like Tony Hawk's downhill jam that thing all the way to the edge of the village, which is a little bit of foreshadowing, but we'll get into that in spoiler talk. But yeah, so the part I like about that, other than the fact that he makes a motorless go-kart, which is just cool, is he uses all of the stuff that he made the pulleys out of. And so, like, it's a three-wheel thing, because, like, a three-wheel cart, because he made three pulley sets, and then just bamboo as the braces, and as long as they're going downhill, it goes downhill. And you see a lot of repurposing in this show, so it's mm, eh, I don't know if it's the start of the motif because they have the lime at the beginning that has the four fundamental uses: the whole gunpowder and nidal and soap and all of that, and growing plants. That's the fourth one. Haha! This show's teaching me things. I'm so happy. Yeah, so I don't know if it's like the start of the whole repurposing motif because multiple uses and repurposing are kind of interchangeable in my opinion. But it's a continuation of that, and that there'll be continuations that I'll probably keep bringing up to make my podcast longer, so I get more watch time. So once they get to the village, we meet Kinro and Jinro. They're really interesting characters. They start off by trying to just double murder Senku. Then Kohaku fends them off because she's right there, and we get a pretty good sense that they're just not. They're too smart to fight Kohaku. They know they're gonna lose if they start that. There's a very I love Attack on Titan, and there's, I think it's like episode 2 or 3, there's like a flashback to when Eren and Mikasa are kids, and they start chasing after a bunch of bullies, and the bullies are really excited when Eren's running towards them because they get to beat up a little kid, and then they see Mikasa behind him, and they all just run away from the little girl. Very much that vibe, and I really dig it. But yeah, they go from really angry murder people immediately into 3-year-olds as soon as Senku starts blowing bubbles for them, which is so funny. Then once he notices that they're so, like, they don't really understand what bubbles are, and they don't know how he's doing what he's doing, he's like, oh, these people, like, they're not dumb, but they're also not civilized, so I'm gonna have a huge advantage in, and he literally says, in conquering this village. Oh, I'm sorry. In conquering this village, and he has this big villain speech that, at the very end gets undercut by, Kohaku, by talking about how he makes such a creepy villainy face, and I do really love how Senku just looks like a villain, just all the time, basically. Then, so yeah, Kinro Jinro, lots of fun. Rules are rules and all that. Then, once Jinro gets a little too much of the bubbles and can't fight them off, he runs out to go get Chrome, who is the village sorcerer, and I love Chrome. I think he's a great shadow to Senku, in such a way that he is what Senku would be if Senku was a product of this village. He's just so cool in such a dorky way. Like, he is just a nerdy little kid collecting stuff and then doing stuff with what he's collected, because, I mean, surely if you do something with all the shiny stuff, it'll do stuff for you. And I like that. He also, I find out he practices medicine on his own body. That is some G level shit. But yeah, so he shows up and he challenges Senku, this new sorcerer, to a battle of sorcery, and it's amazing. At the beginning of it, we get what Jinro's imagining, and you get little Senku and Chrome shooting lightning bolts at one another, and when Chrome's all confident at the first challenge, he steps up and he starts the rainbow bridge, and you get the big old burning rainbow kanji with like a splash art of his villain face as opposed to Senku's villain face. And he builds this big old fire and starts doing a flame test. Yeah, he starts doing that thing that you did in like 6th grade as your first lab ever. Like there was dropping water droplets on a penny, and then the teacher would know, like, hey, anyone who fails at that can't do the flame test. We got to pair them up with a rational human being that's not going to burn the building down. And that's how I always got paired with the fucking idiots in chem class. So, oh my, I'm just making all sorts of friends today, aren't I? So yeah, he does a cool little flame test, and it is a really awesome. They really hype it up. They let you know what Chrome thinks he's doing, and they give his perspective of tossing just a huge amount of copper or whatever it is into the flames, and there's the big burst and the color change, and there's all of the people around him freaking out, and you see Senku being like, oh, wow, that's impressive that you have all of this stuff. Like, where did you find all of these minerals and stuff? And the kid's just like, I found them. I know what, that's just what I do. I collect stuff. And Senku's like, all right, cool, let's keep going. And, so he pulls out, this big old, ball of sulfur, which Senku even points out is like, oh, wow, this is actually really impressive. Like, I'm gonna beat you at your own game, but just the fact that you made something like this is crazy. Like, our old world came up with this in the 17th century, and you're working more or less in the, I don't know, probably, no, there's stone. I think all of the weapons at the village are stone, so they're literally in the Stone Age, and Chrome is just, his parents are so AFK or whatever that he has all this free time, and he can just try everything, and he invented something, albeit he didn't know how to harness it and utilize it properly, but he still made something that we humans didn't come up with until, like, I don't know, I guess well after fireworks, so the flame test actually goes in with that. I'm trying to think of, hang on, 1 second. Okay, I've googled 17th century scientific advances. So, Chrome rocketed past things like telescopes and noticing laws of planetary motions. Like, he's building stuff that Galileo would have been working on. It's crazy how smart Chrome is. I think that he is, I honestly don't know too much about the online discourse about this show, but I would imagine not a whole lot of people think Chrome's like their favorite character, but I got Chrome in my corner. He's definitely one of the best Krillin characters that's ever been in a show. And I don't even think he qualifies as a Krillin character. Like, I get that he is a shadow of the main character. He's what a normal circumstance of the main character is. But he's just so useful, and he keeps doing more and more stuff that is really helpful to the protagonist. It's more of, I don't know. I guess we'll just land on Krillin character, because that's basically what it is he's just the perfect shadow to Senku, and he really keeps helping Senku, and he keeps doing scientific innovations without Senku's help, and he is constantly like doing things way past what he should be capable of connecting the dots for, and it's really, really awesome to see him do the whole, Sudoku with one number in it, figuring out and connecting dots to new advancements that he can make. It's just primo gold stuff. All right, speaking about gold, you get a secret Japanese lesson in this show, in this episode. So, we hear, obviously, Kinro and Jinro's name. And at one point, Senku makes Kinro a golden mixture that he dips his spear into that puts a nice shiny golden tip at the end of his spear, and it looks all cool. And Senku has a line where he says, "Yeah, Kinro, it the golden sword." So now we got to use our heads here. So Kinro and Jinro, you use your uh, brain to notice that the end is the same and the beginning is different. So golden sword and then something else, you get to a point where Jinro asks, "Are there any silver spears?" So we can infer that Keen is gold, Jin is silver, and Ro is sword? I don't know. I don't speak Japanese. So that whole 2-minute explanation might have been me talking out of my ass. But that's what it sounds like. So if anyone does speak Japanese or feels like doing some research, let me know. But I feel like I learned something. But yeah, we also get Senku brings up that he plays Dragon Quest, which to each their own. I feel like I would really like Dragon Quest if I ever got into it, but I don't really enjoy games where I have to watch multiple movies before I can really play the game, which is why I don't play Final Fantasy, but that's not why we're here at this podcast. Oh my god, so many people. I have opinions. I have so many opinions. Oh, hot takes. Yeah, so we'll get to the end of the episode. All of this is a 17-minute what did I like section. I love this episode. So Chrome, after the whole battle and they get to their whole collector circle jerk, which is really, really fun. I love seeing I love seeing someone geek out about someone's collection, and that kind of reignites the passion that someone has for their own stuff. It's lots of fun. But yeah, that night while they're kind of settling in, Senku tells Chrome about everything that we had in the world before it was turned to stone and all of this, and you really get a feel for Chrome's grief and his loss at all of this stuff. Like, the love of his life would be cured. He would be able to be learning and maybe even going to the moon, like things that he would never even dream of. And it's a really somber scene that ends in a really, really good sentiment, which is Senku telling him, like, "Hey, I get that you're upset, but don't worry, we're gonna fix it all. Like, I have everything in my head, and we have one opponent so far. It's a strong opponent, but if I can build my kingdom of science, we will get back to that world." And that is a very anime protagonist level of optimism, and I really dig it. I really like the energy, and it's just a good wrap to the episode. And then, of course, we get the tease that they're going to start working on antibiotics. Oh my god. In the future of the show. So, yeah. That's kind of spoileries. Like I said, there's nothing not to like about this, so let's just hop into spoilers. So we get to see everyone. We get to see everyone at the village. We get to see the chief. We get to see Magma. We get to see Magma's awful little goblin friend. It's a nice little scene. I like that they're all fully character modeled. There's not like anyone's in shadow or anything. And you really get a feel for the community and how different but together everyone is. And it's a really great little montage of Senku freaking out about where did all of these people come from. And you also get to see the chief, who totally looks like he's wearing a wig with the blonde hair and black beard. But we find out why there are some people that have that particular coloration to their stuff. There's a lot of mystery being interwoven just in how people look. Like, yeah, I know that they bring up earlier. One of the reasons why I like that they bring up that the fact that Kohaku is blonde-haired and blue-eyed is odd is because it gets that genealogy, like biological mindset it plants that into your head. So then when you're watching all of this, you're like, where do any of these people come from? And then of course there's like the goblin people that don't look like humans that you're like, okay, that's odd. But I would argue that there's a good explanation to that, which would be inbreeding, but it's something that the show might put into the background and just kind of hand wave about how something like that would happen and not go into detail. But there are some people that look not like people, and there's a pretty, like, it's a healthy gene pool, but it's a shallow kind of healthy gene pool of this village. And I think that's about all I want to talk about the topic, so we're gonna leave that there. But it's stuff that I like. God, I don't. Okay, let's temper that statement. I'm glad that the show is being realistic. I don't particularly enjoy being confronted with the idea that most of the village is probably inbred. And that is all I'm going to say on that matter. Okay, let's move past the only serious portion that will ever be on this podcast. My God. Alright, yeah, so the more interesting thing that's not going to get super deep is antibiotics. Yay, medicine. And obviously the first thing that comes to your mind if you know about antibiotics is penicillin, which is, of course, what they end up going for. And at this point, the first time I was watching the show, I was laughing because penicillin in the Stone Age, in my opinion, like, this is the real big spoilery part. Turn off if you haven't seen further into the show. I didn't know you could make penicillin out of rocks. I thought it was literally just you grew the mold. Is it mold or is it a fungus? I think it's a mold. You grow the mold and you just, like Senku says, you grow a bunch of mold and be like, oh, this one's super green and powerful. I didn't know that you could get like a reliable medicine out of. I know that there are some medicines that are based off of minerals. I didn't know penicillin could be one of those. And yeah, it's cool. I like the more stuff I like. This whole episode, even the stuff that isn't in the episode, is things that I like. I love learning new stuff about things that I already think I know a lot about because I knew that they were going to be doing penicillin when it came to antibiotics, but I literally thought that the next few episodes were them going to be struggling in a cave to grow stuff, and like maybe he knew a secret trick to grow the right type of mold or whatever, but I'm glad that that's not what they do, because this show's way more interesting than that. Any other spoilery things? We don't see anything about Tsukasa for a long time. No, I think that's mostly it. So let's wrap this up. What's the big takeaway, Gordon? Don't waste time in your anime. There's not a single second of this episode that's wasted. Everything is doing its own thing and setting up the next thing. Senku is their talk about the relationships does its job of continuing from the last thing, not even that. Yeah, it continues from the last episode. It says what that conversation wants to say, and it sets up the next scene, which is kind of a continuation of that same conversation, which is when they're asleep and Kohaku's sleeping with daggers in hand and not under any blankets or anything. And she blames Senku for all his talk about relationships in the previous scene. Every single scene is like that. From there, like Senku talks about how we don't need a hard journey tomorrow. Well, the next scene is about how hard their journey is, and it sets up the fact that Kohaku's sister's in trouble. Okay, so then, after their hard journey of making the card and everything, they go up to see the sister, but Kinro and Jinro stop them. So that whole conversation happens. That leads to Chrome showing up. Kohaku gets to, once Chrome shows up, that continues the whole Jinro-Kinro thing. And it keeps in mind, at the end of the Chrome thing, Kohaku takes the water over to her sister, so then that conversation happens and sets up Renee, so you know who Chrome's talking about at the end of the episode. And then from there, we get to see the whole Kinro, or the Kinro Golden Spear thing, which does its own thing and sets up Chrome's stash and medicines and stuff. It's just, everything sets everything else up in this episode. No time is wasted. It's a masterclass in pacing. And I think that's it. Yeah. If you're trying to get a lot done in an episode of an anime, watch this episode and take some goddamn notes. But yeah, we're gonna call it there. I really love this anime. This episode is a great. It's just a great cool down from the high octane fighting and dealing with this murderer. We can relax and take a few passive turns on this, like some development turns on the game of Civilization that Senku's playing, while still being interesting. Like, you still get to be just as excited as when you're dealing with a murderer, but it's not grave. It's not, oh, people are dying on screen at the hands of this guy. It's that same level of intensity, but being poured into, look at all this cool stuff we can do. And the fact that you can keep up that same intensity of excitement that dread can cause, you've done something really good, and you've written good characters that make sense why they are as optimistic as they are, is because they're just so jazzed and they want everyone to benefit from this cool stuff they can do and that they know they can do. And the fact that they have to deal with evil people has been showing up in the last few episodes. I really love that we get to revel in, this is all of the cool stuff that we can do. So, I don't know. It's time to stop talking.